competition is one of the most beneficial things you can do for your jiu-jitsu for many, many different reasons. And what we're going to do in this video is discuss a little bit about competition. We're going to give you some ideas about how you can structure a competition cycle. We're also going to give you a calendar of some recommended competitions, and then also look at how you might want to look at building your training around that as well. The first thing I wanted to talk about was, like, why don't people compete? And for me, it kind of comes down typically to two reasons. The first one is money. Competitions, particularly like major competitions, they do cost money, right? Like if I was going to go over to Worlds, it's probably going to cost, I don't know, $3 or $4 grand to do that, something like that. That is expensive. You don't necessarily have the money, the capital to do that. That's absolutely fine.
Maybe shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's the other point, right? You don't necessarily want to be doing that. You can't all be jiu-jitsu bums. The major reason, though, why most people don't compete comes down to fear. Okay, fear of losing, fear of your teammates being embarrassed for you, and that is not it is a legitimate thing, but it's not a good reason not to do something as well. For me personally, I've flown out to competitions. I remember I flew out to Finland once, ADCC trials, and lost within 25 seconds. And that
Everybody's
sucked.
lost.
Yeah.
Everybody who competes has lost, pretty much. And if you can think of somebody who hasn't lost, they're the outlier, because you can think of them.
Exactly, yeah. But the competition has so many benefits. The most important one, as we kind of mentioned earlier, is that you get better, way faster. Like, I think I got to my black belt. I think I backed my black belt in like 5.5 years, something like that. And a big reason behind that was I was competing very, very consistently, even when there weren't a lot of competitions in the UK. Like in my most active year, I think I did 11 competitions, and I was in like 7 or 9 different countries. And that's how you get good quick, okay? So it's really, really, it's like shortcutting the process.
All of you guys who keep asking me how to get better,
go compete.
Go compete.
You'll find out what your weaknesses are. The next thing, and one of the reasons that kind of tied to that, is it gives you goals as well. Like, it gives you things that you're working towards. And when that happens, it means that you tend to focus a little bit more on your training. You focus more when you're in your training. You clean up your diet, you add in strength and condition, you improve your sleep. So generally, you kind of just get healthier and improve all those other aspects of your life. Okay, so it's really, really important having that kind of structured set goal, particularly something where you're going to go and fight another human being, really, focuses you. Another one, again, which is very, very closely linked to the fear thing, is stress inoculation. Like, it teaches you how to handle anxiety, how to handle stress, how to have like fear, and just deal with it and understand that it is a natural part of life. You cannot go through life expecting not to be scared.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time kind of avoiding fear and avoiding pain and avoiding all these negative emotions, but learning how to deal with them is important. And if you don't learn how to deal with them, if your kids don't learn how to deal with them when they inevitably come up against fear, pain, anxiety, it makes them crumble.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to withstand the pressures of life, and you can artificially put yourself in situations that increase your ability to withstand the stresses of life.
And competition is one of those things. And it's great because it gives you, like, if you set the goal, let's say I was going to compete in 6 weeks, there is an amount of adrenaline that would dump right now. So I'd be like, wow, I've got this goal. That's going to be, I'm going to have a few little nerves right now. And you'll have that across the whole 6-week period. And it is, like we say, really, really important, because you're going to have to go to job interviews. You're going to have to go to exams. You're going to have to be in like stressful situations. And competition is a way of helping you just understand that that's just part of life. It's part of being a human and being able to deal with those emotions in a much more
don't want to have your
positive way.
You don't want to have your first experience with fear be some situation where it actually matters what the outcome is. The best thing about competition is that the outcome really makes absolutely no difference whatsoever to your life. Like, you can lose a competition at the weekend and go into work on Monday and nobody will even know about
exactly.
it. And it's very different than failing a job interview or failing an exam or something that actually will have long-term impacts in your life.
The final one that I think is really important is it's fun. Like, the actual build, so in my opinion, the build up to competitions, like the bit where you enter the arena, and that's stressful. Like, it's always sucks. Stepping on the mat, that's the easy bit, right? But everything else around that is also fun. Like we were just over at the Europeans. We got to hang out with everybody. We had some great food.
We went to
Like
the Chuscarilla.
yeah,
It's
we went to a
fantastic.
Chuscarilla. We like all the stuff around it is great fun. Like hanging out with your friends, hanging out with your teammates, like going for food afterwards, being in a new country. That stuff's really cool. And competition is a way that you get to experience that. So it is just a fun experience to do. So when you think about how you think about competing is also very, very important. A lot of people, when they get into competing, they start to think like, I've got to win, like I'm going to get the gold medal. But really, that's not the purpose of competition. Our purpose for competition is we want our winning to be a byproduct of getting better. That's how you want to be thinking about it. Like if the problem is if you win gold, or if you set your mindset to be, I've got to win, when you lose, you become a failure. Whereas if we reframe that to being, like if we win, then we have learned something. It's something that we've done. We've improved our jiu-jitsu. And if we lose, we can take the lessons and improve and develop those. It's the difference between having growth, a fixed, and a growth mindset. My skill level, my value as a jiu-jitsu player is not linked to the outcome of a competition. Okay, and it's really, really important, particularly for kids, to develop that type of mindset. It's also like an amazing tool to find out where your weaknesses are. People will do stuff in the gym and they'll let you get away with stuff in the gym that they will never do in competition. It's one of the most common things that you hear coming off. I just couldn't, that sweep always works in the gym and it just didn't work then. It's like, yeah, because people fight you harder for those things. So your technique has to be better. Your timing has to be better. Your understanding of how to move people or whatever has to be better when you compete. And then the final thing is you will pretty much, well, I always find in my life, the only things I ever regret are the things that I don't do. Like I said, I once went to Finland and lost in 25 seconds. The following year, I got invited back, and it was after I'd competed 11 times. And at the time, you had to get invited to the ADCC trials. And I was really burnt out and really tired, and I said no. And to this day, I regret that. I don't regret going to Finland and losing in 25 seconds. I find it a funny story, but I really regret not taking that opportunity to go out and experience that again and try to do better the second time. Okay, so it's really, really important you kind of have that mindset as well. Like you don't look back on things that went wrong. It's just part of life, right? You always look back. Yeah, you shouldn't. You always want to don't have those regrets in your mind. Take the opportunities when they're there. So when we were talking about setting up this kind of competition calendar and thinking about our students and how we would look at them competing, we identified 4 different tracks. Okay, so we have like pro competitors. Those are the people who want to win world championships, compete in ADCC, be professional jiu-jitsu players and like build their livelihood around jiu-jitsu. The second one is like master athletes. Those guys can still have goals of like, winning world masters, doing really well in competition, but they started too late to be kind of competitive in the adult divisions. It doesn't mean they can't go on to have like careers in jiu-jitsu, but it's a different track and the way you want to approach it is slightly different because a master athlete tends to not have the same freedoms as a pro athlete would. Like you get married, like you have kids, you have a job. It's a different way to think about it. Then you have amateur competitors who are just like, they're the weekend warriors. You do a couple of competitions a year. You just go out there, you test your skill, jump in, jump back out again. And that is cool. You can be on that track too. And then the final one is kids. We don't distinguish between like the pro kids or like the kids who all want to be athletes or whatever. It's all the same. It's not important.
The only difference for kids that are really into jiu-jitsu and want to do jiu-jitsu more is that they get kind of pushed into leadership positions at the gym. Yeah. That's the difference for them. It has no bearing on their competitive experience. Kids should do as much competition as they can.
So like the kids who really want to be competitors will just naturally do more competition. Yeah. Okay, so we don't distinguish in the same way because there's not really a correlation between how successful you are as a child athlete versus how successful you are as an adult athlete. I've seen it thousands of times in the sport that we're in.
For every child phenom that comes up, you don't see it so much because we're kind of removed from the community in the UK. But for every child athlete that comes up that becomes a phenom that rips through the colored belts, you have 50, 100 in that gym who have washed out that you never hear from, who are equally talented but didn't make it through. So never assume that because a gym is producing standout child athletes that they're actually producing them at a rate that's unusual. What they're doing is churning through athletes.
And once we understand that we've got these 4 different tracks, then we also want to look at our competitive cycle, because it's not just that we go to competitions without any plan. You want to have a plan in what you're doing, and you have 3 different cycles you're looking at. You have like a macro cycle. That is your big picture. So you want to set a goal that you are trying to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to use the pro competitors as an example. It will be something like Worlds, right? You know that is the big goal that you are working towards in gi competition, right? Then what you have is like a meso cycle, which is like intermediary little steps to get that. So for example, if you know you want to do really well at Worlds, kind of have to do Europeans to get that experience. You have to do Pans, right? So we then have 3 competitions.
Or Brasileiros.
Right?
One of the big 3.
So then we have this kind of meso cycle, which is these small little things, and the idea is that we're ramping up to that big picture of winning Worlds. So we do like, the way that you want to think about it is like gradual steps up the ladder. So we do a competition, we ramp up to 1, we drop down a little bit. We ramp up to the next one, drop down a little bit, ramp up to the next one. And so you're peaking by the time that you get to that main goal that you've had for that competition year. The 3rd cycle is like a micro cycle. And that might be where you have like, let's say the London Open in between.
It's like a 6-week block.
Yeah, it's like a small little block. It's like the next competition that you're going to do, which your goal is not necessarily to submit people as fast as possible and get in there as quick. It's to like work on your weaknesses, to try to like fix the areas that the mistakes that you made in say Europeans or Pans. And you have these tiny little blocks. So the calendar that we've kind of created follows that same kind of line. We actually have 2 to 3 different phases as well. So let's jump over it and take a look over here. So you can see that we have these 4 different tracks here. And we'll talk about the Pro one first. So Euros is out of the way. The reason we didn't do it earlier is because if you're going to do Euros, you would need to be prepping for this already. But this is kind of a general year-long thing that we want people to do. And then we need to have, because we're based in the UK, it's slightly different to if we're based in the US, for example, where the competitions would be different. We have 2 main focuses of the year in Jiu-Jitsu, pretty much. We have Worlds, and then we have either IBGF Worlds or ADCC tends to be around a similar sort of time as well. So we would look at those being our main goal focuses. They're the ends of our macro cycle. Within that, you would have those other little bits, like separated out by a couple of little months that we're looking at working with. So we use the London Open or ADCC trials as a way to kind of peak and to also think about like how can we improve. Then we have other main competitions. See, we've got little blocks that we can kind of take off in between these. These are where we're like not necessarily focused as heavily on like peaking to be into a competition. And then the same following on this other block over here as well. Masters, you've got the Euros again, but then you have the Euro Masters, which is a different competition. It is, I would say, not necessarily as the level of competition isn't necessarily as high at Euro Masters, but it's a great competition. It's something that we can work towards. And then you've got no-gi Euros as well, might be the other one that you're working towards. And you can see in the difference between these two is the levels of intensity that we've got. We've really only got 3 peaking moments here versus like every other month being a peaking time that you would be doing in the pro thing. That's because all they're supposed to do is train. Then we have like recreational or amateur athletes, and we've only set up 2 for those guys. Okay, it doesn't mean that you have to stick to these schedules, but also the competitions that are chosen aren't necessarily the high-level competitions. British Open, again, like it's not the same level as like European Masters or even like London Open necessarily would be.
This is also all kind of so you also have to consider we're saying, you know, the level of the British Open isn't as high as the Euro Masters. That's kind of an average as well. So you also sometimes get standout athletes that show up at these tournaments. So don't always assume that everybody at a local tournament is going to be a local competitor, because often you'll run up against somebody who's a nationally ranked or even internationally ranked competitor because they're brushing up on their tournament experience at locals.
Yeah, or they might just be in the country. I remember one year the final of the British Open was Victor Estima versus Clark Gracie.
This year at the British Open, I fought Christine from
McDonald,
Derby, from Derby, and she just won her division at Master at Euros. So like, you get that. Yeah,
it happens. But as a whole, the people who are kind of more focused on, like, for example, doing Worlds or whatever, they might not necessarily be at that competition because it doesn't fit in with their cycle that they're working towards, you know. Often you'll find that guys will do like you'll see this with a lot of the guys on Instagram and stuff. They'll enter some random local competition just so that they can get
in
experience.
grappling industries divisions before,
and it's just to kind of get like on mat time against someone who's going to be fighting that little bit harder. But they're pretty much going to walk the competition if they go there. And so again, then we've got these other little ones here, UMAC, which is very close to us, which is like a good competition for people to get some basic experience in. You've got National Masters again. These are kind of more relaxed, kind of chill competitions where you don't get the same kind of intensity and the same vibe. And then the kids, the same thing was setting up for the kids. Now, obviously, kids have a lot of, extracurricular activities. They've got schoolwork to do. They've got all that kind of other stuff. So we just looked and we found like 2 competitions that kind of work well for the kids that we also know that they're probably going to get matches in. Like these are the 2 biggest kind of kids competitions in the UK. So the chance that you're going to get a match drastically increases, right? Whereas something like UMAC, you're probably not going to find a...
If your kid is maybe 8 and right in the middle range for their weight, then you'll probably get a match. But if your kid is on either end of the scale, maybe not.
It might be more challenging for you to do that. So you have to be thinking about those kind of stuff as well. And then we've got other little competitions just kind of dotted in there.
Kids should be competing as much as possible. Ideally, maybe 9 to 10 competitions a year.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you wouldn't put your kid in football and expect them to never play a game, which is the equivalent of putting your kid in jiu-jitsu and never taking them to a competition. Really, the mat time is just the practice, and everything else happens on the competition mats. It's doing half a sport, essentially.
Yeah, so this is kind of the approximate schedule. You can see that we've kind of balanced it out between peaking and GPP. You can talk to us about this and we'll help you come up with a plan. But this is the way that you want to think about it.
Pro and masters athletes, there's further information that you should reach out for, because there's some things that you need to fill out, some planning that needs to go into it. The higher level you want to compete at, the more thinking has to go into it.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we picked these specific competitions is we can know they're relatively well run, and they're accessible to people. Like there's tons of other competitions out there that I wouldn't necessarily recommend that people go to, or they're just too far, right? I know on the same weekend that UMAC's on, for example, there's like 5 other competitions in the country. Why did I pick UMAC? Because it's like 45 minutes down the road. It means that you can go in there and get some experience, and it doesn't take up like a whole weekend. It's just like a morning or an afternoon for a lot of people to go down there. Okay, so that's why we've kind of done this area. The other thing that we've done is we've put it all together in like a Google Calendar as well. So we have like all of our events and stuff in this calendar. I'll share it, you can add it, and we'll update it as we go. I think, did you add the links in here as well?
As many as I can.
Yeah, we've kind of added the links to the competition pages.
Some of them are a little bit too far in advance, so they don't have competition pages yet. But if there is one, then...
Yeah, that's that's kind of what we want to be working towards. Is like it's just giving you the accessibility, so you don't have to search around for them. This is just a calendar that anybody can use, pretty much. I know a lot of people use Google Calendar to work that. So that's the thing. Now, in terms of like actual training, like what should you be doing in your training? Again, that depends heavily on your goals. We can't really generalize. So you have to decide what track you're on, and then once you've decided that, you can discuss your goals and how to train with us. What I would say is that if you are going to compete, you need to get into some of the competition classes. It is impossible for you to cram for a competition. Yeah. Okay. Parents, this is kind of directed at you, because I see a lot of parents trying to bring their kids in like the week before a competition to get as many sessions in as they can, but that's not how training works. Your training happens in the month and a half before a competition. The week before a competition should be chill. Yeah. Very relaxed. For kids, they can keep training because they're made of rubber and they just kind of bounce back. But yeah, exactly. But you can't force them into extra training and think it's going to do anything but harm their performance. Yeah, we like as we mentioned earlier, the competition victory or whatever is a byproduct of your training. So the idea that you can cram for a competition doesn't make any sense within that context. Like you should have already done the training. It's just there. We're going out testing our skills, seeing where we're at. If our skills are good enough, and we perform well and like the stars align, then you win, great. We still look at your performance and try to improve it from that point. Regardless of whether you win or lose, it doesn't make any difference. How can I be better the next time I step on the mat? So you want to set up a schedule that is manageable for you, sustainable for you,
and enjoyable for your kids.
Yeah, and enjoyable for you. Yeah, for you, well, for you or your kids, depending on who's doing it, right?
Yeah.
But that's what we want to be trying to do. And
unless you're a pro athlete, in which case you're going to hate a lot of your training, and you just got to deal with it because that's the sacrifice of being a pro athlete.
Being a pro athlete,
sorry, guys.
like as you might have seen in the when I was talking about the schedule, there's an allotted 2-month period where you're kind of, the goal is just to wind down. Like you have to go through these, we call them crucibles, where you have this very intense period of training and then you kind of take a break and relax from it. In jiu-jitsu, it tends to be that the first half of the year is very gi heavy up until Worlds. Then you can kind of chill for June and July, or July and August, and then it ramps up into no gi. Okay, that's for like pro athletes or people who are on that kind of world stage type thing. Masters is slightly different because of World Masters is in August. But it's the same idea. You would take June, because you're not going to go to Worlds, June and July off as a way to kind of relax, decompress. You can still train, but your goal is it's almost to give yourself the mental space to recover so that you can go again and go intensely into the thing. All right, but that's the general idea. But like I said, training, this is not something you can't cram for competitions.
No.
We will happily advise you on a schedule that would work for you, what you need to be doing, how you're going to prep for it, all that kind of stuff. But hopefully you found that useful. If you have any questions, just talk to us and we'll do our best to help you out. Any final thoughts? No. Have a wonderful day.